Hello and welcome. We're going to wait just a moment while everyone has a chance to log in. Welcome everyone. We're going to get started in just a minute. Well, good evening, friends, and welcome virtually to University of Puget Sound. My name is Robin Eigen. I'm Director of Undergraduate Admission and a proud alumnus from University of Puget Sound's class of 2004. I'm coming to you live from the Welcome Center on campus this evening, and from all of us here at the university, I'm glad that you're here. We are very eager to welcome you personally to campus next month and are excited for all the steps along the way to get you here. Now, our program tonight is going to cover everything that you need to know related to financial aid and student accounts prior to your arrival. As always, we want to answer all of your questions, and we invite you to reach out to us individually if you'd rather speak one-on-one about any questions you have. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping notes. First, closed captioning is available by clicking the closed caption icon at the bottom of your panel. Second, this is a meeting, not a webinar, so your cameras and microphones are functional. They will work and are available to you if you'd like to turn them on. It's certainly fun for us to get to see all of you. We do ask that you remain muted during the program, however, so that there aren't interruptions. But although you're muted, we do most definitely want to hear from you. Please post your questions, your comments in the chat. We actually have a team of folks behind the scenes from both admission and student financial services who are here to answer questions. And then we will also take some of your questions live during the event. So let's dig in. I'm joined tonight by Cree Bradford and Brian Gould from Student Financial Services. Brian is our Director of Financial Aid. He'll speak a little later in the program, but now I'm very pleased to turn it over to Cree, who is our Director of Student Accounts. Good evening, Cree. How are you?
Hi, everybody. Welcome. We normally in the past have done this in person. I hope that we get to do that soon. Maybe we'll see you all. Well, I hope that we all see each other in person in August, but it's a lot more lively when we are in person talking together. I've been at the university about 20 years, and I'm the Director of Student Accounts. I oversee our billing efforts. Hopefully by now you all were contacted around July 7th about the bill and payment system and the fact that you can go see the billing information for fall semester. If you have not been notified, the biggest thing, or likely what has happened, is your student has not set you up as an authorized user. They need to go into the bill and payment system and grant you access. It's not too late to do that. If you have problems or your student doesn't know how to do that, we can sure help them get you set up. So right now the billing is out there to view. The payment's due August 15th, so you definitely have time to figure out your plans. We have a payment plan. You can definitely choose to use that each semester, or you can pay in full. We do recommend getting this all finalized by August 15th for fall semester. If you're using the payment plan, there's an $80 fee per semester that you use it. Each payment installment will be due the 15th of each month throughout the semester. If you choose to use the payment plan again for spring billing, you do need to go set that up again each semester. We don't assume just because you use it in the fall that you will use it in the spring. And one of the big things that your student needs to consider is what kind of meal plan they want to use. We default bill the meal plan C, which is our average meal plan. I would say it's for the middle of the road eater. You know, we do have 2 lighter meal plans and then 2 larger meal plans. So if your student, if you haven't noticed what meal plan they have, you might want to go look at that, because this first semester is when you can test out which one is right for them. If you use meal plan C and you find near the end of the semester they haven't used the full meal plan, you might want to go down a meal plan to meal plan B or meal plan A for spring semester. It is important to look at this, look at the dining services website where they describe in good detail what the meal plans are, because only 25 dining dollars will roll into spring. So if they have 300 dining dollars left, 25 of that rolls into spring for use and you lose the rest. So that's very important. You know, I don't want anyone upset. We don't want anyone upset at the end of the semester if your student doesn't use the entire plan. You know, you could go with the smaller meal plan B. If they end up running out of dining dollars in November, then they can go add dining dollars to the plan. We'll bill you if they add dining dollars. You can add them in $25 blocks. And there is no price differential or advantage or disadvantage if you use a smaller meal plan and you add dining dollars later. But you do want to keep in mind that you want to have them using the majority of the meal plan, because only 25 rolls into next spring. And we'll hit on this when we talk about spring billing, but at the end of the academic year, you don't have any meal plan dining dollars rolling into the next year. So you lose everything if there's anything left at the end of spring. That's really important. So that's kind of what I really want to talk about. We can help you a bit on that, but dining services staff, they are the experts as far as details go, what kind of meal offerings. I can just say if your student uses a lot of or consumes a lot of the bottled drinks, convenience food, that might cost a bit more than if they're using the prepared meals that the diner is offering. So I do have, we're following this important dates to remember memo, and we will email a link of that out to you all so you can refer to this later. But just so you don't think you need to remember all of this. So August 15th is the payment deadline. We will send one more billing reminder or monthly statement out. It's going to go out on August 7th, excuse me, August 2nd. That's a Monday. So that'll be your final reminder about payment being due. If you haven't set up a payment plan, you'll want to get that done. If you're using a 529 plan to pay in full, you should email our office to let us know that that's how you're paying. That we'll make a note on your account, and then that ensures you don't get any late fees. We want to work with you. We never want to give anyone a late fee. So if you ever have any special needs or you need a little bit of leeway with the payment deadline, just email us. That's what we're here to help. So we're going to roll into August 15th. That's when payments due. Hopefully you have it all situated by then. We will contact families and students that we haven't heard from because we definitely want to help you get that situated. So then the semester starts, hopefully everything's going well for your student. We get into December. We're starting to think about spring billing. We post spring billing in early January. We're gone for a winter break, so it usually posts around January 2nd. For spring billing, payments due January 15th. We have an extremely short turnaround. It's just how it is in the spring. So like I said, for fall, if you're using a 529 plan, if you're sending a check, email us so we can note your account, because for spring, the check may not arrive. And then we just know that that's how you're paying, and it just makes things a lot smoother. One important note, your first year, most of you submitted an advanced tuition payment for $500. That payment pays down your fall bill. So when you get your spring bill, it's going to be $500 more because you don't have that advanced tuition payment paying down your spring bill. It pays down your fall bill. So we don't want anyone caught off guard by that. But your payment plan installments may increase if you're on a payment plan. You might owe a little bit more for spring just because of that. I can't think if there's anything else, but you just need to be aware of that. If you borrow a federal Parent Plus loan, you may need to borrow a little bit more in the loan, or you pay the remaining cost out of pocket for spring. Just bottom line, email us if you need help. We're here to help. After your first year, everything smooths out and billing is usually even amongst the two semesters. I mean, unless you change meal plans or something, that's usually how it goes, because financial aid is split evenly amongst the two semesters. Charges are usually even, so it smooths out. Again, two important things in the spring. You've got to set up a payment plan again for spring billing. And then if the meal plan is adjusted, you've got to adjust it again, or your student, I should say, needs to adjust it again. And they just log into My Puget Sound and they see the pop-up box there about meal plans, and they'll be able to change it or adjust it. The charge updates the next day when they adjust the meal plan. So we do have a link in our document about tuition adjustments and some other important information. It's on our website. But if you have questions, you just need to contact us. We're definitely here to help. In the spring, the other big thing that happens is we issue 1098T tax statements. And that is telling you how much qualified tuition you paid. And you may be able to claim an education tax credit. So your student, once they grant you access to the bill and payment system and they set you up as an authorized user, there is an option where they can say, yes, I want my parent to see my billing and details, and yes, I want them to have access to my 1098T. As long as they do that, when we issue this 1098T tax statement, you will get an email that it's ready, and you can go get it. It's in a PDF, and then you take it to your tax consultant or TurboTax, and you figure out if you can claim a tax credit. So we have to issue those by January 31st, and we never have a problem doing that. So after that, the next important thing for you all to do is renew financial aid. And that is Brian's coming up to let you know some important things about financial aid.
Thanks, Cree, and good evening again, everyone. My name is Brian Gould, Director of Financial Aid. It's a great opportunity to speak to you about things to expect and plans to make for what will essentially be your student's second year on campus. I know it probably sounds a little strange to be talking so far in the future, but now that your student has decided to join us here at Puget Sound, it's good to be thinking about kind of what next steps you may need to consider, because time does go by quickly, and before you know it, we'll be talking about the holiday season and winter. So with that in mind, it's important to note that you do have to, for those of you who have filed a FAFSA, you do have to renew that FAFSA or complete the FAFSA application each year in order for your financial aid to renew as you would expect it to each and every year. The FAFSA focuses on need-based financial aid. And so when I talk about need-based financial aid, I'm talking about federal loans, perhaps work study, if you were awarded work study, Puget Sound grant, federal grant. All of those items require a FAFSA to be completed each and every year. And so it's not just a one-time thing, it's an annual process. For those of you who did not file a FAFSA, your student, of course, received some form of merit scholarship, which is renewable each year without the need for a FAFSA to be on file. And so I do want to recognize the fact that merit scholarship is renewable each year, absent the need for a FAFSA. But any other financial aid that you were awarded for this upcoming year, you'll want to be sure and complete a FAFSA each year that you're enrolled on campus. And typically we start promoting that in March or February, March. We would like to have FAFSAs completed for, in essence, your second year on campus by March 31st, because that will allow for us to get everything prepared in time for us to deliver a continuing student financial aid package mid to late June. And so that's just a bit of a window into the future, I recognize, but an important one as you kind of start to think about subsequent years. We always talk about admitting students and having them enroll for 4 years. And so we want to be sure that you're well prepared to have kind of a seamless experience when it comes to your student finances over that 4-year period. In addition to completing the FAFSA in subsequent years, I also like to encourage students to consider outside scholarship opportunities and to begin researching those typically right after the holiday season, January, February. That's a good time to start looking at what kind of outside scholarship opportunities that might be available. That's usually when they begin to get promoted. And typically the deadline for those can be kind of, March or April. And so each year I talk with students in April who are wondering if there's any more scholarship that they can apply for. Maybe they're asking me in June when they get their continuing student financial aid package. And by June, it's too late for the following year. And so I would definitely mark your calendar for January or February to start looking at outside scholarship opportunities that your student may be able to apply for and receive for what would again be their second year on campus as they're moving into year number 2. As far as the FAFSA, in addition to renewing that FAFSA, I also have a note here to make sure parents complete the PLUS loan application each year. That's at studentloans.gov. That's also an annual process that you don't want to take for granted. All of this, of course, is so that you kind of have a soft landing when it comes to bills being generated in July and then, of course, due that following August. A couple of kind of housekeeping items, I guess you could say, because bills have been generated, as Cree pointed out, there are some students that may have questions about their financial aid package. You do not have to accept your financial aid package. You don't have to kind of raise your hand and say, I want this financial aid that you've offered me. We assume that to be the case. And so it's already being counted as a credit towards your billing statement. If you're not interested in, say, loans that have been offered, you can decline those loans, and there's a way in which the student can do it themselves through their My Puget Sound portal. Or if you're unable to figure that out, of course, you can email us and let us know, and we'll be happy to decline those loans on your student's behalf. A common question is, why are you offering me loans when I don't want them? The truth is that when you file a FAFSA, you're eligible for federal loan regardless of the results of that FAFSA. And so we offer them to you because you're eligible, but we're more than happy to decline them on your behalf if you wish to not take advantage of those student loans. Those are some of the items, I guess, that come kind of fresh to mind. We wanted to be sure and leave plenty of time for your questions. And so perhaps what we'll do is ask Robin if any questions have come in, or if there are things that Cree and I can speak to directly from the audience.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Cree. We had some really good questions come up in the chat just regarding meal plans and kind of what happens with residual funds. And I think an important note is that the university does not partner with a third-party vendor to provide food service to our students. That's all done through dining conference services on campus. And as you might imagine, there's a fair amount of planning and purchasing and staffing that goes into every semester relative to what we predict students are going to want. So certainly, to the extent that we're able to, we will roll over a certain amount up to $25 from one semester to the next, but that's where the limits come into play. So I really appreciate the question there. Another question that came in is, can you just decline the unsubsidized but accept the subsidized student loans? Brian, do you want to?
Yeah, absolutely. For those of you who have been offered student loan, some students are offered unsubsidized loan, which basically means that your financial need has been met by virtue of your financial aid package. If we're unable to meet your financial need with grant assistance, then you're eligible for a subsidized loan, which is, I guess, preferred to the unsubsidized, because if you have a subsidized loan, what that means is that the federal government is going to pay the interest on that loan while you're enrolled. And so if given the option, or if you feel as if you only need the subsidized and not the unsubsidized, then you definitely can, and I would encourage you to decline the unsubsidized if you have that option between the two. You also can take a partial loan. Some families will ask, maybe I'll decline my loan now, but what if I need it later? It's not too late within an academic year to reinstate a loan that you wished you hadn't declined, or the opposite. You can decline a loan after you have received credit for that loan, understanding, of course, when you decline it, then you're going to have a bill due because your loan is counting against your bill. But nonetheless, there is flexibility to decline or reinstate loans if indeed you change your mind kind of midstream.
Great, thank you, Brian. Another one here related to loans: how long does it take for the university to receive funding from a private student loan? And can we say anything more about that process?
Yeah, with private student loans, I'll camp on that topic for just a moment. In the case of a private student loan, you're going to need to go out and secure that loan through a private bank or credit union organization. And typically a student, of course, will need a cosigner, a credit-worthy cosigner, in order to take advantage of a private loan. But there's certainly legitimate loans, and there are students that make use of them. I encourage you to first take advantage of the federal loan offer, and then perhaps move into a private loan if you're feeling you need more than just what the federal loan limits provide. In terms of the timing, I guess mileage can kind of vary on that, but I wouldn't be too concerned as long as we have the paperwork and we're able to certify the loan on your behalf. Then we're counting on the funding, and we'll wait on that funding to arrive, typically right around the start of the term, which is when we begin to disperse these loans onto your student account, which is just kind of a fancy word for saying we're kind of releasing the funds and actually having them credit your student account. So I wouldn't worry too much about the timing of that funding, as long as you've completed the proper paperwork so that we can certify the loan. And you're more than welcome to reach out to us if you have more additional questions about private loans, but they're welcome to be used, but my feeling is that if you're given the choice, federal loans are a good first stop, and then private loans would come after that.
Great. And there's a follow-up question, Brian, to a previous question. What's the best process for declining an unsubsidized loan? Is there a self-service way to do that in My Puget Sound, or should you just email Student Financial Services?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked, because there is a self-service way, and we would love for students to learn how to do that and take advantage of that, because once you learn, then you could just do it for yourself throughout your enrollment at Puget Sound. If you go to my.pugetsound.edu, log in, and then look in under student finances, there is a link for view financial aid. And there's where you'll find your financial aid package for this upcoming year. It'll be under aid year 2022. That'll be like a little hyperlink that you'll click on. And then you'll see your financial aid kind of all lined up on your screen. There's an option to accept or decline your loans, and your subsidized loan is separate from your unsubsidized. And so you can just select the unsubsidized, decline, and then submit, and that should do the trick. If for some reason there's a technical issue, then just, don't stress, just email us. But please try and do it yourself, because that's a more efficient way, I think, to get the job done.
Great. Thanks, Brian. And Julia posted a great question in here about what's happening nationally with federal student loans related to the pandemic. So she says, I heard a rumor recently that the government was forgiving federal student loans because of the pandemic. If I were to take out a federal student loan right now, is there any chance the feds would forgive that loan, or are they done forgiving loans for pandemic-related reasons?
Good question. I want to make a clarification. They're not forgiving loans, although on the news, there's tons of talk about that kind of within, the Biden administration and kind of the future. I mean, who knows kind of what the future holds for kind of true loan forgiveness. But I want to be clear, what's been forgiven during the pandemic is interest accrual on loans. And so it's not like the loan balance that is being forgiven. It's just, some of the attributes of these loans, such as interest accruing, as well as kind of payment deadlines. There's been a lot of flexibility given, to students regarding repayment. And it's hard to say whether that's going to extend kind of into the future or how long it may extend into the future. So I think you're right to be researching and kind of paying attention. I'm actually happy to hear that you're aware of that. But it's not loan balances right now that are being forgiven. It's just kind of some of the attributes, as I said, like the interest rate or the interest accrual that would be in the process of being forgiven. And Cree, I'd like for you to just make sure I'm correct on, and to your knowledge, what I'm speaking is true, correct? I don't want to miss anything.
Right, there's special COVID relief, and it's 0% interest rate. No one has to repay loans through September 30th. And that is when it expires. And I have heard from some of our borrowers that are technically supposed to be in repayment now, that they've received information from their servicers that they need to prepare to go into repayment because it'll be due, 30 days after this expires, unless the Biden administration extends it. So at this point, we have to assume that everyone will go into repayment at that point.
Thank you, Cree.
And perhaps you could just say a quick word about how repayment for federal student loans works. I know we talked about the difference between subsidized and unsubsidized, but when does repayment start?
Yeah, repayment begins, I would like to say at graduation, because everyone that is enrolling this year will be graduating from Puget Sound 4 years from now. But the truth is it either at graduation or technically at the time that you separate from the institution. And so, if you're to take, like, say, a year off, like a leave of absence or something, after I think it's a three month or 6 month period after your what is it, 3 or 6?
6.
Thank you. After 6 months after you separate from the institution, whether it's by virtue of graduation or going on leave or what have you, that would be the time in which repayment would begin on your student loans. And you actually are repaying, as Cree earlier mentioned, the loan servicer, which the federal government, contracts with, I want to say 8, no more than 10 loan servicers. And one of those gets assigned to your loan so that becomes then the entity that you're making your payments to upon graduation. But payments are not due while you're enrolled, while you're registered as a full-time student. I make sure I say full-time student, because if you drop below a certain level, again, that could trigger then loan repayment. But as long as you're registered as a full-time student, you're not needing to make payments on these loans until you graduate or no longer are registered.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Cree. We've got a couple questions in here. I'm getting a little out of order, but there was a question about work study and how that is determined and awarded. And perhaps after that question, I can speak a little more broadly to student employment on campus more generally. So the question is work study determined by FAFSA, or how is that determination made?
Yeah, it's determined by FAFSA, and the reason for that is because we do not have a sufficient allocation of work study. We get our work study dollars come either from the federal government or the state government. So need-based work study is federal or state dollars. And each institution gets its own allocation of dollars, and that's really what we have to use in order to support our work study program. And because of that, not everybody that files a FAFSA and has need is eligible to work by virtue of the number of positions that we would have available for students. And so there is some math that kind of goes into projecting the number of work study jobs that we have. And so therefore, when you file a FAFSA, it is your FAFSA results, the EFC, expected family contribution, that determines whether or not we're going to be able to award you work study. For those that do not get awarded work study, that doesn't mean you can't work. It just means that you're not being, in essence, kind of guaranteed a job on campus. You have to go through a little bit more legwork in order to secure employment. But in talking with our career and employment services colleagues, it's fairly rare that a student who wants to work isn't able to find a position or an opportunity. So I don't want you to feel discouraged. You just might have to connect with career and employment services kind of in a separate fashion. But that's how it works. It equates to about 8 to 10 hours a week of work. And so it's not an overwhelmingly kind of taxing position. We want you to be a student first, and a student worker kind of just complements that opportunity for you to be a student here. So, if you're making minimum wage, that's going to equal, like I said, about 8 to 10 hours a week of work. And our departments tend to be pretty flexible with students, recognizing that, again, they're students first. So that's my kind of 2 cents. I don't know, Robin or Cree, if you wanted to add anything.
I'll just add that work study is on your financial aid award, but it doesn't credit to your billing, because you get the paycheck every month and you can do whatever you want with those earnings. So that is something we get asked about. You're not required to pay your account with your work study earnings. It's just like a normal job. You can do whatever you want with that money.
Another question related to work studies: where can we go to view work study details? I believe additional details became available today. Brian or Cree, I don't know if you have a different answer. I would say our one-stop shop for sending you information or making information available over the summer is that my.pugetsound.edu. But certainly if you have questions about work study that aren't answered there, reaching out directly to Career and Employment Services, I think, is also absolutely a good option.
Yeah, I would add to that. I was talking with my colleague Elizabeth in Career and Employment Services, and they did send an email out to all students, but they send it to the student email address. And so this might be an opportunity to check in with your student about checking their email. I know that that seems to be, even for me now, kind of like, with texting and everything else that goes on, email tends to be the last place someone might check, but it's their email account is really the official way in which we are able to communicate with your student. And so an email did go out, I think, referencing a link to like upload your resume and kind of do some prep work for your employment upon arrival to campus. And so check in with your student and make sure that you have that. And if not, as Robin said, reach out to Career Employment Services and they'll be happy to resend it.
And Cree, you spoke to this in the chat, but perhaps you could expand a little bit on just other scholarships that students may have received and the renewability.
I told Ty to email our office so we could look at the financial aid award and what scholarships are being referred to. And Brian can confirm, but the majority, if not all of the university scholarships are renewable. But sometimes the renewal requirements vary, or you might need the FAFSA for the Puget Sound grant. I just think you want us to look at your awards so we can tell you, because you might be referring to a scholarship, but it's a grant and then the FAFSA is required. So let's just, if anyone has any questions about that, you should email us so we can, give you the personalized answer. A lot of high school or first year scholarships you might bring in with you, if you have any, are 1 year only. So they credit, and help you out this year, but they're not renewable in future years. That's what I've noticed.
Those external scholarships, right?
Yeah, external scholarships. Yeah.
Yeah. And
which I usually,
go ahead, Brian.
I was just going to say, like, those would be kind of like the Rotary scholarship, or maybe a scholarship that your student receives at graduation from high school, maybe, typically, $1,000 or $2,000, which is super helpful. But as Cree mentioned, those are almost always 1 year only. And so I could see you relying upon those because you have them in your first year, which is why it's important maybe in your second year to continue to research those outside scholarship opportunities so that you can capitalize on them in future years too.
And related to that, are there opportunities to get additional scholarships after the first year from University of Puget Sound?
There are, although they're limited. We really focus our attention on providing a financial aid package to students at their point of entry in hopes that, it's renewable and will be sustainable through their 4 years. And so we don't have kind of like this separate, robust program for second or third year students, but we do have some limited endowed scholarships. And by that, I mean, over the years, there have been donors who have provided funding to the institution with the request that they be used for scholarships. And so those tend to be much more narrow. Honestly, I mean, it's like for like a biology major or for, say, a music major. It depends upon the department and it depends upon the donor's wishes as to how those scholarships get awarded. But the good news is that there are some. But I just want to kind of caution the idea that that they'll be kind of like plentiful. I mean, they're more competitive and they're more limited. Similarly, like with opportunities for student leadership, every year we have, I think, 50 or 60 RAs, resident assistants, who are getting, room and board as a part of their hard work on campus as resident assistants. But that's a neat program that some students might be able to take advantage of, in their second or third year. There are other leadership opportunities too. And so do know that there are opportunities, but they're far more limited than what you might have experienced as an incoming student.
Yeah, and Kim has posted a clarifying question. So the Puget Sound Faculty Scholarship and Puget Sound Grant, those are renewable ones you are referring to. Yeah. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, so what a great example. So the Puget Sound Faculty Scholarship, that's a merit scholarship, which didn't require you to file a FAFSA in order to receive that. And so that's renewable year to year, as long as your student is making good academic progress. That's all that's based on. The Puget Sound grant, by contrast, is a need-based grant. And so if you weren't to file your FAFSA in your student's second year, you'd wonder where your Puget Sound grant went. And my response would be, it's because you didn't file your FAFSA in your second year. So that's where Cree was talking about. It really depends. And so if you have a Puget Sound grant, you definitely want to be renewing your FAFSA each and every year to ensure that that continues, versus like a faculty scholarship or a president's scholarship or a provost scholarship. Those are scholarships that are going to renew based solely on academic performance.
Checking the chat here. Brian, can you talk a little bit about cost of attendance increases year over year and how that works with financial aid? That's the last question we've got, unless there are more things posted in the chat. So if you've got a question you're thinking about, please do post that.
Sure. So cost of attendance is comprehensive in that it includes tuition, housing, meal plan, student government fee. Those 4 items are direct costs, which that's what we would bill you for absent financial aid. There are also indirect costs, which are things that we wouldn't bill you for. We still associate with you being a student, such as books, personal expenses, travel to campus. All of that combined equals your cost of attendance. And that's what we use each year to determine what your need is. And the way in which we do that is by virtue of your FAFSA results. And so your cost of attendance minus your expected family contribution on the FAFSA equals your need. And so to your question, typically each year tuition will go up 3% to 3.5% depending. So that's something that you do want to assume as you're kind of planning forward. Meals and housing will also go up a small percentage, say, 3%, 2 or 3%. So you do want to budget for that. We try our best with our institutional aid program to offset a little bit of that for our FAFSA filers. By virtue of your Puget Sound grant, we try and increase that a little each year if we can to help kind of keep up with a little bit of that increase. But I have to be honest in saying that, yeah, any institution that you were to attend, my sense is that there would be cost increases year in and year out to the tune of about 3%. And your financial aid may or may not keep up with those increases dollar for dollar, but we're going to do the best we can to kind of help offset a bit of that with either need-based grant if you qualify, or loans do also increase. So the federal government does allow for your student loans to increase very modestly year to year, which can also help you kind of keep up with some of those increases.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Cree. Well, once again, please do feel free to reach out to any of us. You can find our contact information on the website. We're happy to work with you individually to handle any additional questions you might have. Do be sure to tune into our next summer welcome event. That's next Tuesday, July 20th, which is our 3rd Inside Academics event. And then the final summer series event will be Tuesday, July 27th, which is about orientation and move-in. So be sure not to miss those. We look forward to seeing you there. Have a wonderful evening, and thank you again for coming.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.